Hey all, what's up? This is Six Path Weeb, back again with another deep dive into the Shinobi multiverse. Today's topic, what if Naruko wore a mask like Kakashi? Part 3. We're taking the mystery to the next level. A hidden face, a new persona, how would this change her relationships, her battles, and her role in the Leaf Village? Would she become more distant? More respected? Or maybe even more feared? Disclaimer, the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Strap in, Shinobi. Let's get started. For what felt like the 1000th time that day, Naruko sighed. Itachi and Kisame had been gone since the previous night, and Naruko was absolutely restless. It wasn't fear that kept her from leaving the room. It was simply that she didn't know much about Itachi aside from the stories others had told about his past and the emotional toll he had taken on Sasuke. Still, the stern look in Itachi's eyes when he asked her not to leave had made her think twice. So, Naruko stayed in the room, leaving only briefly to get lunch from Deidara. Plus, the chakra seals Itachi placed on the room had been reinforced, twice as strong as before. The hole Naruko had accidentally created in the wall the previous night was promptly repaired by Kakuzu, who, from what she gathered, had a strong dislike for damage and waste. As he fixed the wall, Naruko could hear him muttering to himself about unnecessary expenses. She decided to be helpful and even apologized, engaging in a small conversation. To her, Kakuzu seemed decent enough, until the topic of money came up. Then he transformed into someone quite fixated on financial matters. After the repairs were complete and lunch was over, Naruko tried to meditate and practice channeling her new abilities. But, true to her spirited nature, she quickly became bored and eventually decided to take a nap. Now, at 7 in the evening, she woke up sore, restless, and, more importantly, very hungry. She needed something to do, and it was clear Deidara wasn't bringing food anytime soon. It was time to be proactive. She knew her way to the kitchen, there was no reason not to go get something herself. Given how Itachi and some of the other members treated her, excluding Deidara, who always treated her with kindness and equality, Naruko felt more like a guest under tight supervision than a part of the group. Stretching her arms, she let her feet dangle off the bed for a moment before standing up. "Kit, where are you going?" "To get some food, obviously. I'm starving, and Deidara isn't coming," Naruko replied, walking to the door. She reached for the doorknob but was met with a sudden, intense surge of energy. Yelping, she pulled her hand back and cradled it, blowing on her fingers to soothe the discomfort. Itachi's chakra seals again. "He really doesn't want you going anywhere, huh?" Naruko frowned at Kurama's amused tone. "It feels like I'm being treated like some kind of prisoner," she mumbled. "Perhaps it's more about protection than restriction," Kurama mused. "I know it feels stifling, but there's a chance he's just trying to keep you safe. Maybe showing a bit of appreciation wouldn't hurt." Naruko blinked, Kurama's words slowly sinking in. "Protection? Safety? Appreciation? You're asking me to be sweet to the person who literally brought me here without my say in the matter?" she asked, tilting her head in disbelief. "Think back, Kit. The night you arrived, you woke up healthy, clean, and well cared for, didn't you? I helped with the healing, yes, but Itachi is the one who tended to you and ensured you rested in comfort. If he didn't care, he wouldn't have gone to such lengths." Naruko's eyes widened slightly. "So, he helped take care of me while I was unconscious?" "Wait," her voice cut off as a thought hit her. Her face turned bright red. "He didn't bathe me, did he? That means he saw me, no. Sliding down the wall in embarrassment, Naruko groaned and covered her face. Kurama chuckled softly. "It's not the end of the world, Kit. Honestly, you're beautiful, and anyone would say the same. There's no shame in it." Naruko groaned again. "That's not the point. No one's ever seen me like that before." She ran her fingers through her golden hair and glanced out the window, watching the glowing evening sky. She had thought of escaping once or twice but quickly dismissed the idea. She wasn't foolish, escaping would only land her in more trouble. Frustrated, she flopped back onto the bed and mumbled to herself, "Itachi, you'd better come back soon so I can have a serious talk with you." Meanwhile, Itachi's brow twitched faintly as he and Kisame moved through the forest. Though he remained stoic on the outside, internally, his thoughts revolved entirely around Naruko. Despite the physical distance, the chakra barriers he'd placed in his room gave him updates whenever Naruko tried to interact with them. She had already attempted to open the door multiple times. Itachi sighed inwardly. Why was she so determined to leave? Surely, the hideout wasn't exciting, but it was far safer than the world outside. He also couldn't deny the small sting of jealousy he'd felt seeing her enjoy Datara company. She had seemed genuinely happy. He admitted to himself that he hadn't spent much time with her since her arrival, apart from that unfortunate moment when his temper had briefly flared. He regretted that. Deeply. It wasn't how he wanted to interact with Naruko, and he knew it. While these thoughts swirled through his mind, Kisame, ever perceptive, glanced at his partner. "You've been quiet, Itachi. Is this about the girl?" Kisame asked, snapping Itachi from his thoughts. "HN." Kisame grinned at the simple but telling answer. "You care about her, don't you? Did you know her back when you lived in the village?" Itachi remained silent, his expression unreadable. Kisame chuckled but respected the lack of response. "The town is just ahead. Let's make this mission quick," Itachi finally said, picking up the pace. "Sure thing. Just try not to get too distracted thinking about her," Kisame joked. "Either way, what happened before we left? She seemed ready to argue with you." "She was frustrated because I asked her to stay in the room," Itachi replied calmly. "Why not let her wander a bit? She can't go far." Kisame raised an eyebrow. "Kisame. Imagine being a petite young girl surrounded by adult men who can be unpredictable. Would you take the risk?" Kisame let out a loud laugh. "Fair point. Now I see why you're being extra cautious. Still, you seem a bit too concerned for someone who insists they don't care." "Enough, Kisame," Itachi said sharply, his crimson eyes glowing briefly. Kisame raised his hands in mock surrender. All right. No more teasing. Dash. Back at the edge of the forest, Neji and the rest of the team stopped to regroup. They had been traveling non-stop, and exhaustion was beginning to settle in. Sasuke, however, looked far from tired. His rigorous training had built up impressive stamina. "We need to keep moving," Sasuke said with a scowl. Neji responded with a glare of his own, but before either could speak further, Kakashi stepped between them. "Sasuke, I know how much finding Naruko matters to you. We all want that. But take a look at your teammates. Not everyone has your energy level." Sasuke glanced at the group, exhaled, and crossed his arms. "Fine." Neji cleared his throat. "Kakashi, I remember during the mission to save Gaara it took 3 days to complete the extraction process. If they haven't started anything, we may still have time." Kakashi nodded. "That's right. We need to act wisely." Neji called the group together. "Here's the plan. We'll divide into 3 teams. Team 1, me, Tenten, and Lee. Team 2, Hinata, Shino, and Guy. Team 3, Ino, Choji, Sasuke, and Kakashi. When we reach the nearby city, we'll choose a central meeting point. Everyone clear?" "Hi." They all responded, save Sasuke who just nodded. "Youthful leadership, Neji. That's the energy we need." Guy cheered, flashing a dazzling smile. Tenten sighed. "Even during serious missions." Ino chuckled. "Let's get some rest before we move again." As the group settled, Sasuke pulled Kakashi aside, speaking softly. "Do we really need to wait around with the others? They'll only slow us down." Kakashi gently placed a hand on Sasuke's. "We're stronger together. Everyone has their strengths. Ino can gather intel. Choji adds muscle. And the girls can gather information through conversation in ways we can't." Sasuke pulled his hand away, only to step into a tight embrace. "We're coming for you, Naruko," he whispered. Kakashi smiled and held him close for a moment. "She'll be okay, Sasuke. We'll find her." Sasuke didn't reply, but he allowed Kakashi a brief, comforting kiss on the cheek before turning back toward the group. "Just stay still. Why can't you just find Hinata or Tenten instead?" "Because there's no time. They're all the way on the other side of town. This still isn't going to work." Ino sighed as she tried to pull Sasuke's short hair into a neat, high bun. Their group had just returned from a short break and had immediately split up to search for clues. Neji's team covered the southern route, Guy's team took the east, and Kakashi's team went west, since they had already explored the northern side earlier. So far, Choji, Kakashi, Sasuke, and Ino had found nothing helpful, until Choji stumbled upon a rather suspicious-looking bar tucked away in an alley. It was the kind of place where shady characters gathered, possibly making it ideal for gathering intel on any troublemakers. Kakashi had suggested Ino use her disguise skills, which she was initially reluctant to do. After some encouragement from Choji, she agreed, but only if Sasuke came along. That led to this moment, Sasuke being transformed in a local girl's restroom. Ino clicked her tongue and finally secured all the short strands of Sasuke's hair, then reached for the long black ponytail extension they'd picked up at a nearby wig store. She clipped it into place, stepped back, and frowned slightly. Something still felt incomplete. Sasuke, clearly uncomfortable, turned his face away. Here he was, in a restroom being styled by a former admirer. It almost made him laugh, if the situation weren't so serious. This was for Naruko, his closest friend, and he was willing to endure anything for her sake. After all, he was Uchiha Sasuke. A disguise wouldn't stop him. Ino brightened as inspiration struck. She dug into her pouch hidden under the purple kimono they'd rented and pulled out a small kit. Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he realized what was in her hand and instinctively took a step back. "Oh no, I'm not putting those on," he said, eyeing the mascara and false eyelashes. Ino rolled her eyes and stepped forward confidently. "Look, Uchiha. We're doing this for Naruko. If it helps us get the information we need, you can handle a few eyelashes." Sasuke exhaled sharply and crossed his arms. "Fine. But Naruko owes me for this." Ino smiled and carefully applied the lashes, fanning them gently to help them set. She clapped her hands once she was finished. "Perfect. I've officially made Sasuke look absolutely charming." Sasuke gave her a long look. "If you tell anyone about this." Ino chuckled and waved him off. "Relax. I'm over my old crush, remember? You've got nothing to worry about." He stood and adjusted his kimono, only to pause and glance down. Something still felt off. "This isn't going to work." "What now?" Ino asked, arms crossed. "I don't exactly have the figure for this," Sasuke replied matter-of-factly. Ino arched a brow. "Look, not every girl needs to look a certain way to be confident and attractive. Beauty comes in all forms, and personalities matter more anyway. You're doing great. Now come on, we've got a mission." With that, she marched out the door, leaving Sasuke behind to shake his head and follow. Dash. As they entered the bar, Sasuke leaned closer and muttered, "Don't touch me like that again." Ino simply ignored him and scanned the dimly lit room, smiling at the attention they were receiving. They made their way to the bar, where Kakashi and Choji watched from a nearby table. Choji munched on fries while Kakashi observed everything calmly. They sat at the bar, and Sasuke pulled away from Ino's arm just as the bartender, a friendly-looking man, approached. "What can I get for you two?" he asked with a cheerful grin. Ino leaned forward and smiled. "2 sparkling juices, please." The bartender nodded and walked off. A man in a white shirt and black slacks took a seat beside Sasuke, eyeing them curiously. "Well, it's not every day we get such refined company here," he said with a smooth tone. "What are your names?" Ino quickly answered, "I'm Sakura, and this is Sasuko." "I'm Jin Minori. Pleased to meet you," he replied, his attention focused on Sasuke. He leaned in, trying to strike up a conversation. Sasuke clearly felt uncomfortable but kept his composure. Ino kept a close eye on the interaction. "I wouldn't get too friendly," Ino said with a polite but firm smile. Jin raised an eyebrow. "Why's that? Is your friend spoken for?" "As a matter of fact, yes. You've heard of Uchiha Itachi, haven't you?" she said coolly. The room fell silent. Glasses clinked to the floor, and even the bartender froze in place. Choji coughed as he tried to process what he just heard. Did she just say Itachi? Kakashi glanced up calmly. "Let's trust she has a plan." Jin pulled his arm back and scooted away nervously. I didn't know she was with him. I'm really sorry, I mean no disrespect at all." Ino leaned forward casually. "Actually, we're looking for him. Have you seen him?" Still startled, Jin nodded. Sasuke stood quickly and grabbed the man's collar, not aggressively, but firmly. "Where?" The man shakily pointed to the back door. "He just left with someone, a business associate." Sasuke immediately made his way to the door, Kakashi close behind. Ino quickly tossed an apologetic glance to the bartender. "Sorry for the sudden excitement, my friend just really misses her loved one," she said with a nervous laugh before hurrying after them, Choji following. A man in a trench coat seated in the corner put out his cigarette in the ashtray. He quietly stood, hands in his pockets, and left the bar while whistling a soft tune. Kisame and Itachi calmly walked along the quiet forest path, their footsteps barely audible among the gentle chirping of nighttime crickets. Having just completed their mission in town, Itachi looked forward to returning to his quarters. What he truly desired, however, was to see Naruko again. He didn't know exactly why, but her presence had become something he missed. Itachi. A familiar voice echoed through the trees, prompting both Akatsuki members to pause and glance behind them. Kisame raised an eyebrow. That voice. It sounds familiar, he said with curiosity, then looked to his partner, who seemed just as alert. You don't think? Kisame started, and Itachi silently nodded in response. A figure gracefully leapt from the shadows and approached them. The distinctive red eyes were unmistakable, as was the flicker of electricity in the air. Itachi. Sasuke stepped into the moonlight, his expression serious and unwavering. Little, Itachi began, but stopped as he took in Sasuke's appearance. Kisame couldn't help but laugh, trying to contain himself as Sasuke dramatically removed a fake ponytail and artificial lashes. Itachi, where is Naruko? What have you done to her? Sasuke demanded, voice trembling with emotion as he prepared to charge. Before he could act, Kakashi appeared, gently grabbing his shoulder. Sasuke, calm down. You need to think clearly. Let me go, Kakashi. Sasuke struggled against the restraint, keeping his eyes locked on Itachi. Itachi stood silently, his calm demeanor unchanged. Kisame wiped the tears from his eyes as he tried to suppress his laughter. Well, that was entertaining, Kisame chuckled. Thanks for the unexpected comedy, kid. Sasuke frowned, clearly not amused. Where is Naruko? The girl? Don't worry, she's safe and sound, Kisame said with a smirk. He turned and began walking away. Itachi gave Sasuke one last look before following Kisame. Kakashi stepped forward. Wait, so Naruko is okay? Kisame glanced back with a mischievous smile. That's for us to know. And you to find out. With that, the two disappeared into the night. Far away from the tension, a young blonde girl was jumping beneath a tree, trying to reach a shiny red apple hanging just out of reach. Almost got it. She huffed, determination glowing in her bright blue eyes. She jumped again, but landed softly on the grass with a small sigh of frustration. Need a hand, Naruko-chan? Came a calm voice from the shadows. Naruko turned quickly and lit up with joy. Raven. Her favorite Anbu had arrived. He strolled over, easily plucked the apple from the tree, and handed it to her. Thanks, she said cheerfully, munching on the apple as Raven silently watched, amused by her energy. When she finished, Naruko smiled up at him, a little blush on her cheeks. Thank you again, Raven. Raven gently patted her head and began to walk away, but Naruko quickly reached out and took his hand. Wait. Where are you going? Raven paused and gently squeezed her hand. I'm just switching shifts. Wolf will be watching over you now. Naruko's smile faded slightly. She liked the others too, but Raven had a calm, comforting presence she especially enjoyed. Sensing her disappointment, Raven crouched down to her level and lifted her chin gently. Want to visit the secret spot tonight? Her eyes widened in excitement. Yes, please, she said, wrapping her arms around him in a hug. Raven returned the embrace. Then I'll see you tonight, Naruko-chan. Later that night, the soft click of a door closing woke Naruko from her sleep. She rubbed her eyes and looked at the clock. 2 a.m? She mumbled. As her vision adjusted, she noticed a familiar figure standing by the window. Itachi? He turned slowly at the sound of her voice. Their eyes met, hers blue, his red. Hello, Naruko-chan. She sat up in bed, puzzled. Did you just get back from your mission? He nodded silently, still watching her intently. Feeling a little flustered by his stare, Naruko looked away, then took a deep breath and turned back. Listen, she began, a bit awkwardly. I'm still not happy about being locked up in this room. But I guess. Thank you. For not leaving me all alone when I first arrived. That night. You helped me, and I didn't forget. She crossed her arms and looked away again, cheeks pink from the admission. As she began to lie back down, she suddenly noticed Itachi standing closer. Hey, what are you doing? She asked nervously, cheeks warming as she saw his face just inches from hers. Itachi gently placed his hands beside her and leaned close, not threateningly, but with a calm sincerity in his expression. I wanted to say. Thank you, too. And I'm sorry if I made things hard for you. With that, he stepped away and quietly exited the room. Naruko sat up, touching her face with both hands, her heart fluttering with confused emotions. What just happened? The soft melody of birds singing outside stirred the blonde awake from her peaceful slumber. Her violet maroon eyes fluttered open, only to be met by warm sunlight streaming in through the blinds of a partially open window. Naruko winced slightly and closed her eyes again, giving herself a moment to adjust before slowly sitting up. Or at least she tried to. Confused, she turned her head to the left, and her eyes widened in surprise. Right beside her, lying calmly with an arm wrapped gently around her waist, was none other than the calm and collected Uchiha, Itachi. Naruko carefully tried to move the arm off her, but even in his sleep, Itachi remained surprisingly still. She huffed softly in frustration and glanced at him again, only to realize he was now fully awake, his deep crimson eyes calmly gazing back into hers. Her mind wandered momentarily, entranced by those fascinating eyes. Unlike Sasuke's, which often carried frustration, Itachi's eyes were calm, composed, and filled with wisdom. They seemed to hold secrets and stories that Naruko couldn't quite grasp. Snapping herself out of it, Naruko frowned and cleared her throat. Would you mind?" she asked, motioning to the arm around her waist. Itachi simply raised an eyebrow, pretending not to understand. Naruko pointed to his arm, then looked back at him with a firm expression. With a slight smirk, Itachi responded, "This is my bed, after all. But if it bothers you, you're free to use the floor." Naruko crossed her arms and gave him a disapproving look. She shifted to get up, but her foot got caught in the sheets and she tumbled to the floor, bringing the blanket down with her. Itachi sat up and looked over the edge of the bed. "Are you all right, Naruko?" he asked, his voice neutral but not unkind. Naruko pouted and tossed the sheets back at him before heading toward the door. "I'm going to eat," she muttered, stepping into the hallway. The delightful smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen. Naruko followed the scent and stopped at the doorway, surprised to see a masked man in a pink apron cheerfully flipping pancakes while humming. He turned around and exclaimed, "Wow! You must be the blonde Datara-senpai told me about. You're so adorable." Naruko smiled politely, rubbing the back of her neck. "Thanks. I'm Naruko, by the way." The masked man gave a playful salute. "I'm Tobi, Datara-senpai's partner. Have a seat, my pancakes are amazing." Naruko took a seat, and Tobi quickly served her a plate with butter and syrup on the side, then joined her at the table. "These are great," Naruko complimented after taking her first bite. Tobi beamed with joy. Just then, Datara and Kisame entered the room. Datara gave Tobi a suspicious glance. "What are you doing, Tobi?" "And nothing, senpai. Just making pancakes for Naruko-chan." "As long as nothing exploded, I don't care," Datara muttered. Naruko continued eating quietly, observing their interactions with mild amusement. Datara sat down next to her and glanced at her outfit. "Hey, Naruko, you don't have any other clothes, do you?" he asked casually. Naruko shook her head with a smile. "Nope. I wasn't expecting a change in plans." Datara tapped his chin, then grinned. "How about I take you shopping today? There's a nice little district below the mountains. Until then, you could borrow one of my sister's kimonos. I'm sure one will fit you." Naruko nodded, blushing slightly. "That sounds nice. Can I come too?" Tobi asked eagerly. Datara rolled his eyes but shrugged. "Sure." Naruko looked down at her oversized nightshirt and fiddled with the hem. "I'd like something new to wear." Datara turned to Kisame. "You have to come too." "No, thanks," Kisame replied immediately. "But I need someone responsible. Itachi's not exactly an option," Datara added with a side glance. Just then, Itachi appeared beside Naruko with a plate of pancakes. "Actually, I'll join you," he said calmly. Naruko looked surprised but said nothing as Itachi took a bite of his breakfast. Datara gave an annoyed sigh. Uchiha and his dramatic timing. Kisame chuckled. "You know what? I'll come too." Naruko blinked between the group and tugged on Datara's sleeve. "Weren't we going to try that kimono?" Datara nodded, happy for the distraction. "Right. Come with me." He led Naruko to his room, opened his closet, and pulled out a beautiful red kimono with black designs and elegant dragon embroidery. It came with a matching sash and long socks. "You can try this one," he offered. Naruko took the outfit and glanced at him. "Mind turning around?" "Oh. Right, sorry." Datara quickly turned his back while Naruko changed. Once dressed, she gently poked his shoulder. "I'm ready." Datara turned around and blinked in surprise. "Wow. You look amazing, Naruko." She laughed softly. "Don't flatter me too much." He walked over and helped tie the sash securely around her waist. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Deidara opened it to find Itachi, Kisame, and Toby waiting. Kisame gave an approving nod. Looking sharp, Naruko. You look like a traditional festival star, Naruko-chan. Toby chirped happily. Naruko smiled shyly. Thanks. I'll be back in a moment. She stepped out, and Itachi subtly motioned for Kisame to take Toby with him. Kisame nodded and led the masked ninja down the hallway. Deidara began closing the door, but Itachi gently placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. Deidara narrowed his eyes. What is it, Uchiha? Itachi's gaze was calm. I know Naruko trusts you, and I respect that. Just remember, if your behavior towards her becomes questionable, I will step in. With that, Itachi released his arm and walked away, quiet as ever. Deidara rubbed his arm where the grip had been and muttered, that guy is seriously intense. Deidara, are you okay? Naruko called from down the hall, jogging over with concern in her voice. Deidara quickly forced a smile. Yeah, I'm all right, Naruko. She tilted her head slightly, eyes falling to the arm he had just been rubbing. Is something wrong with your arm? I pulled a muscle while tying the bow on the kimono, Naruko admitted sheepishly. Well, I'm glad it wasn't anything too serious. Deidara replied with a warm smile, closing his eyes for a moment. You and me both, Naruko. Yeah, he thought silently. What about this one, Deidara-senpai? I think it really makes Naruko's eyes sparkle. Toby held up a green shirt, enthusiasm radiating from him. Deidara scoffed and gently pulled the shirt away. No. Green is absolutely not Naruko's color. You clearly know nothing about fashion. Yeah. Toby protested and tugged the shirt back, pouting. Kisame sighed and casually leaned his uninjured arm against Seimata. Babysitting his eccentric teammates definitely wasn't on his list of favorite pastimes. He couldn't quite understand what they saw in the young girl. To him, Naruko was just another spirited child. Albeit with a mysterious aura. He glanced at Itachi, who stood silently beside him, observing as Naruko diplomatically separated the two quarrelers. What exactly did you say to Deidara in the hallway, Itachi? Kisame asked, raising a brow. Itachi's eyes remained calm, his expression unreadable. Just offered a fair warning. TCH. I'll make sure not to even glance her way now. It's like you're oddly invested in her, Kisame muttered. HN, was all Itachi replied, signaling the end of the conversation. Eventually, Deidara and Toby agreed on a choice and handed Naruko an orange kimono with a tiger motif. Naruko pointed to the sash, signaling she needed help, and Deidara nodded, escorting her into the changing area. Itachi rose quietly and followed at a distance. Toby sat next to Kisame, fiddling with his fingers. Kisame-sama, why is Itachi so? What's the word? Obsessed, Kisame offered, keeping his eyes closed. Yes. That's it. He's been watching Naruko really closely today, Toby said thoughtfully. You tell me, Toby, Kisame replied with a sigh. Inside the dressing area, Deidara watched as Naruko twirled in the orange kimono, her black socks still on and sandals resting on the floor. She beamed at her reflection in the mirror and gave Deidara a thumbs up. I really like this one. I just need help with the sash. Deidara nodded and stepped forward, only to be stopped by a quiet but firm hand. He looked up to see Itachi calmly taking the sash. Deidara blinked, nodded, and exited the room without a word as Naruko turned around in surprise. Hey, Deidara, wait, what are you doing here? Where did he go? She asked, raising an eyebrow. It seems he had something else to handle and said you needed help with the sash. So, I offered to help. Unless you'd prefer Kisame, though he's only got one arm to work with? Itachi replied smoothly. Naruko crossed her arms, visibly unamused. Fine. Just don't take forever. Itachi stepped behind her, gently placing his hands around the fabric and carefully tying the bow in the back. Naruko watched him in the mirror, eyebrows furrowed. What are you trying to do, Itachi? She asked warily. Absolutely nothing, Naruko, he answered, eyes focused on the bow. He stepped back once he was done. Naruko twirled once more in the mirror, admiring the fit, then quickly frowned again upon catching Itachi's gaze. What are you staring at? She snapped. Just admiring how stunning you look. Is that so wrong? He replied calmly. Naruko's face flushed, and she looked away. You don't have to say things like that. I'm not beautiful. Do you truly believe that? Itachi asked quietly. Naruko glanced down, avoiding his eyes. I don't want to talk about it. Can we just wrap this up? Itachi moved to remove the sash. Why are you being kind to me? Naruko asked suddenly, covering her mouth as if she hadn't meant to say it aloud. Because I choose to be. Is that a problem? He said sincerely. Naruko shook her head. But why? You're supposed to be. You know, someone feared. And yet, so are you, Itachi replied thoughtfully. Only because some people misunderstand me. Naruko defended. Exactly. People assume things without understanding the truth. Everyone has their own struggles, their own inner shadows. Naruko sighed and nodded slowly. You're right. No one is completely good or bad. I just thought you didn't care about anything. Itachi's hands gently remained on her waist, a subtle but calming presence. I've made mistakes, yes. But emotions aren't foreign to me. I simply choose not to show them. Naruko looked up at his reflection, her blush deepening. For some reason, his presence felt safe. Familiar. Naruko, Itachi said softly, I'm sorry for how I acted last night. She blinked, caught off guard. Did he just apologize? I thought Uchiha never apologized, she teased with a small grin, then frowned, realizing how sincere he was being. I should be the one apologizing. I said something I shouldn't have, she chuckled awkwardly. If Sasuke saw us right now, he'd probably have a meltdown. Naruko stepped back as she turned around, suddenly aware of how close they had been. Well. Look at you two. Kisame announced, leaning against the doorway with a mischievous grin. Itachi shot him a warning glance while Naruko looked away, cheeks burning. Be quiet, Kisame. Why are you here? Itachi asked coolly. Deidara was getting impatient, so I came to check. And clearly, something interesting was going on in here, Kisame replied, raising his hands defensively. Well, if you're done, let's head out. I'd rather not spend my entire day in a clothing store. Naruko quickly changed back into her clothes as Itachi respectfully turned away. Just as she reached for the bag with her outfit, Itachi handed it to her. I've got it, Naruko, he said. She blinked and nodded quietly. Dash. As they exited the store, a small boy pointed toward Naruko. Mommy, look. A monster, he exclaimed with innocent curiosity. Itachi narrowed his eyes, but Naruko gently placed a hand on his chest and smiled at the child. I'm a friendly monster. But I eat silly kids for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, she said playfully, raising her hands. The boy giggled nervously and hid behind his mother, who gave Naruko a small smile before walking away with her son. Naruko turned back to Itachi, still smiling. It's all right. I've heard it before. People don't always understand. And with how I look now, I guess I play the part. Itachi reached out and gently placed his hand on her cheek. But you're truly beautiful, he said softly. Naruko blushed, ears warming. Ugh. Why did the Uchiha have to be so smooth? Even the nine-tails inside her chuckled at the moment. Hey lovebirds, are we leaving or what? I'm hungry. Deidara called from ahead. We are not lovebirds, Naruko shouted, embarrassed. That's what you get for skipping lunch. She added. Hey, if it weren't for me, we wouldn't even be here. Deidara grinned. Fair enough, Naruko muttered. Okay, let's. Itachi gently tapped her shoulder. Naruko, we still need to pay. She laughed and scratched her head. Right. Almost forgot. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now, but the journey doesn't end here. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with the world of anime and beyond. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious, stay inspired. Regards. Six Path Weeb.